Mira stood at the edge of the old playground where she and Jonah had spent so many afternoons. The swings creaked softly in the afternoon breeze, and the metal slide glinted under the sun. It all felt so empty now. Jonah had moved across the galaxy to work on the new research station at Helios Prime. Every day since he left, Mira felt a little more hollow, as if a piece of her had drifted away with him. She ran her fingers along the cool metal of the swing chain and remembered the stories Jonah used to tell. He would spin tales of distant worlds filled with glowing forests and seas that sang under twin moons. His eyes always lit up when he spoke, and Myra would listen for hours, imagining herself beside him on those strange shores. Without his voice beside her, the playground felt silent and small. At home, Mira's apartment felt even colder. His favorite mug still sat on the shelf, bright yellow with a smiling sun painted on it. She had left it there after his goodbye hug, thinking he would be back soon. She dusted it every morning, hoping someday she would pull it down again, hand it to him. But messages and calls went unanswered. A single "I'm fine" message had come days ago, and nothing since. She did not know why he stayed silent. Late each night, Mira sat at her desk, staring at the small communication crystal that could hail any point in the galaxy. She tapped its surface, trying different frequencies and channels, but only static answered. Her heart ached when she thought of Jonah feeling alone on that distant station. She wanted to reach him, to tell him she still cared, but every failed attempt made her feel more distant hand, more afraid that she would never find the right way to bridge the gap. Still, Mira refused to give up. She remembered the motto Jonah had once shared, "Where there is hope, there is." That simple phrase became her guiding light. She pushed aside her sadness and dove into her work in the workshop below her apartment. Sparks flew as she cut metal and wire, assembling small drones and custom transmitters. Each night, she tested her inventions, adjusting circuits and boosting signal strength. Her hands moved with purpose. The hum of the machines and the glow of the workbench lamps comforted her. She imagined Jonah receiving her beep of light across the void, curious and warmed by the thought of home. As she soldered the last connection, her chest swelled with pride. This was human spirit at its best, using creativity and persistence to solve a problem that seemed larger than life itself. By morning, Mira had built a small silver drone no larger than her hand. It held a beacon that could flash in a unique pattern, a pattern only Jonah would recognize. She programmed it with the stories they had shared, the tune of their favorite childhood tune, the constellation pattern they had watched through her telescope, even a snippet of his own voice she had recorded and stored. It would carry these signals across space until it found him. That evening, under a sky painted with stars, Mira launched the drone from her balcony. It glided upward, its lights pulsing in the pattern she had chosen. She watched until it was only a speck, then turned back inside with a hopeful smile. Even if it took days or weeks to reach Helios Prime, she knew Jonah would understand. He would see the beacon and remember their bond, and perhaps he would reply. In the days that followed, Mira continued her work in the workshop. She improved her designs, built backup drones, and crafted small gifts to send along, a pressed flower from their favorite park, a sketch of the playground bathed in moonlight, a note that said simply, "I believe in you." Each item carried her hope across the stars, a testament to her determination and care. Though the distance between Mira and Jonah was immense, her heart remained full of hope. She refused to let fear or silence define their friendship. Instead, she let her ingenuity and compassion shine.
We're at far.
She believed that one day Jonah would find her beacon, feel her presence once more, and know that across billions of miles, someone still stood beneath the same stars, waiting. Mira woke before dawn, the sky still deep blue behind her window. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat at her workbench. Looking at the collection of small drones lined up like soldiers ready for a mission, each drone held a tiny beacon, programmed to flash the unique code she and Jonah had agreed on when they were children. She felt a pang of sadness at how far away he was. But she took a deep breath and reminded herself that giving up did not suit humanity's spirit. Hope gave her strength. She remembered the first time she and Jonah had built a radio transmitter together in her father's garage. They had laughed when the signal crackled so loudly that her mother thought a storm was coming. Jonah had said, "One day, we'll bridge the stars with these waves." Now, Mira believed she could make that dream real. She selected the drone with the strongest signal amplifier, checked its circuits one more time, and then slung it over her backpack like a precious artifact. At breakfast, she pushed toast around her plate without tasting it. Her roommate Kira glanced over and offered a warm smile. Kira knew about Jonah Shea had helped Myra test the early prototypes of the drones. "Any luck?" she asked quietly. Myra shook her head but forced a smile. "Not yet," she said. Inside she felt torn between frustration and hope. She did not want to worry Kira, so she changed the subject to other projects in the workshop. By mid-morning, Mira was back beneath the flickering lamps of her workshop. She assembled a larger array of drones on a launch rail, each waiting to shoot into the sky one by one. She worked swiftly, hands moving like dancers, every motion purposeful. Sparks flew, metal sang, and wires connected with a satisfying click. Though her heart ached with loneliness, she refused to let doubt win. She remembered the HFY motto they had carved into her workbench. Humanity never bows to distance. Outside, the city's rooftops glowed with sunrise as Myra climbed to the tallest platform near her apartment. She set the launch rail down, positioned the drones, and activated their boosters. One by one, they leaped into the air, trailing gentle light that pulsed in Jonah's code. Below, early commuters paused to watch the strange light show, whispering. In wonder, Mira felt a surge of pride. Even strangers were drawn to this small beacon of connection. That night, Mira could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking of Jonah's laugh and kind eyes. She pictured him stepping out onto Helios Prime's observation deck, seeing the light pulsing across the void. Would he recognize it? Would he remember their promise? Her heart pounded as she imagined his face lighting up. In that moment, she knew she had to do more. She reached for her datapad and began to write a message. She typed slowly, her fingers trembling. "Jonah, I miss you every day. I built these drones to send you my voice, my stories, and my hope. Please come home or send me a message. We can bridge the gap together." She attached a short recording, her voice reciting the first poem he had ever taught her. Then she pressed send through the secure channel. She had configured to reach Helios Prime. Her message vanished into the digital ether. For hours afterward, Mira sat by her terminal watching the status line blink, transmitting, awaiting confirmation. She felt both terrified and exhilarated. If Jonah received it, she did not know what he would say. Would he be angry that she had gone to so much trouble? Would he be touched? Would the silence stretch on, mocking her efforts? She closed her eyes and whispered her own answer. Where there is hope, there is a way. The next morning, a single notification lit up her screen. Incoming secure transmission. Mira's breath caught as she opened it. The screen filled with static, then cleared to reveal Jonah's face, eyes shining with surprise and relief. He mouthed her name, and Mira could almost hear his voice breaking. Tears sprang to her eyes. She pressed accept, and his voice came through, soft but steady. "Mira, I saw your lights. I heard your voice. I'm coming home." Mira collapsed into tears of joy. All the nights of waiting, the endless tinkering, every spark and solder joint had led to this moment. She wiped her eyes, smiled through the tears, and whispered, "Welcome home." In that instant, distance vanished. Humanity's spirit's hope, its ingenuity, its refusal to accept impossible shone brighter than any star. And Mira knew that no matter how far apart loved ones might drift, the light of determination could always bring them back together. Mira woke to the soft chime of her cum unit. She rubbed her eyes and saw a new message from Jonah. Her heart pounded as she tapped it open. His words glowed on the screen. "I want to show you Helios Prime. I'll send a shuttle for you." Myra's breath caught. After so long, they would meet again among the stars. She hurried to the workshop and kissed her datapad. She felt both joy and nerves. Building drones was one thing. Flying to another world was far bigger. But she remembered humanity's motto, "We dare because we can." She would rise to this challenge. With that spark of courage, she set to work planning her journey. First, Mira gathered her blueprints for the personal shuttle she had been designing in secret. It was a small craft, just enough for one pilot, built for short, safe trips between stations. She dusted off the panels, testing each circuit. She checked the life support systems she had practiced on her model pods. Every wire and tube needed to be perfect. Her roommate Kira found her adjusting a fuel gauge and frowned. "You're risking too much," she said. Mira paused and looked up. Kira cared deeply, and her warning rang true. But Mira smiled softly. "Jonah needs me," she said, "and I need him." She believed this trip would bring them closer than any drone or a message ever could. By midday, the shuttle stood ready in the launch bay. Its silver hull reflected the workshop lights, and its engines gleamed with promise. Mira ran her palm along the nose, remembering all the hours of work it had taken. She felt pride shimmer inside her chest. This was humanity's spirit at work. Building hope from metal and glass, she strapped into the cockpit, fastening each harness with care. Outside, the bay doors opened to reveal a sliver of sky and the distant lights of Helios Prime's orbiting ring station. Mira's breath came fast. She closed her eyes and whispered, "For Jonah and for us." Then she flipped the ignition switch, and the engines hummed, rising to life. The shuttle glided upward, passing through layers of atmosphere into the silence of space. Mira watched Earth fall away, a pale blue jewel behind her. Ahead lay Helios Prime, a world of glowing towers and crystal seas, bathed in soft lavender light. Even through the cockpit window, it looked magical.
Ow.
She felt hope swell like a tide. Half an hour later, the shuttle docked at the station's central port. Mira's heart fluttered as she stepped onto the glossy floor. She carried a small box in her hands. Inside was a pressed flower from their childhood park, its petals still bright. She had packed it as a symbol of home and memory, and now she would give it to Jonah, face to face. She followed the corridor lights until she reached the meeting hall. Its walls curved upward, showing views of distant stars. Mira's pulse raced. As she entered, there, at the far end, stood Jonah. He wore a station uniform that still looked unfamiliar, but his smile was the same. He opened his arms and said softly, "Welcome home." Mira's eyes filled with tears as she stepped forward. They embraced, and for a moment, the emptiness vanished. She handed him the flower gently. He traced its petals with his fingers and murmured, "I kept one just like this." They laughed through tears. Remembering sunny afternoons on Earth, their bond felt stronger now that they had crossed the void together. Afterward, they walked through the station's garden dome, where alien flowers glowed under artificial skies. Jonah showed Mira his favorite spot, a balcony overlooking the planet's sea. She listened as he described his work studies of Helios Prime's unique life forms and his longing for Earth. Mira shared her own adventures, building drones, sending messages, and the day she built the shuttle. Together, they watched twin moons rise above the lavender waves. Mira leaned into Jonah's side and felt warmth spread through her. She realized that distance could never break them as long as they kept trying. Their reunion was proof that hope and action could span any gap. Humanity's spirit had guided her here, and now it guided them both. That night, they sat in the shuttle's cockpit, gazing at the stars. Jonah took Mira's hand and said, "Never stop believing." Mira squeezed his fingers and smiled. Neither did I. They looked forward to the future, exploring new worlds together, sharing stories and dreams. As the station lights shimmered around them, they knew that hope would always light their path, no matter how far away they might roam. Mira settled into her small quarters aboard the Helios Prime station, watching the lavender glow of the seas through the viewport. She felt a new ache in her heart. After the joy of reunion, days had passed, and Jonah's work demanded long hours in his lab. She had expected them to spend every waking moment together, but her calls often went unanswered. In the quiet of her room, she touched the pressed flower. She carried and wondered how she could reach him again. Each morning, Mira followed station corridors to the communal workshop, hoping to run into Jonah. Instead, She found his empty coat hanging on a hook, his tools left strewn across a bench. His lab partner greeted her with a polite nod, but no news of Jonah's schedule. Myra felt a pang of loneliness. She missed the easy laughter they once shared. She missed the way he looked at her when he listened. The distance between them seemed to grow, even though they stood on the same platform. Still, she refused to let sadness define her story. She remembered how she had built drones to bridge the gap across space. That same spirit called to her. Now, she decided to create something new on Helios Prima, a small festival of lights and music to bring people together and maybe draw Jonah out of his lab. She sketched plans on a datapad, rows of floating lanterns, each with a gentle glow, and a simple melody they could play through the station's speakers. Mira worked tirelessly. She collected spare panels and wiring from old maintenance pods. She soldered tiny light cores and wound speaker coils, humming as sparks danced at her fingertips. Other station residents watched her enthusiasm and offered to help. An engineer lent her amplifiers. A botanist provided luminescent algae to give the lanterns a soft, living glow. As the project grew, Myra felt hope rekindle inside her chest. She realized humanity's true strength lay in coming together, not standing alone. The night of the festival arrived. In the station's central dome, Mira hung the glowing lanterns in sweeping arches. Soft music drifted through the air, notes rising and falling like a gentle tide. Families, scientists, and travelers gathered below, faces lit by curiosity and wonder. Mira stood at the edge of the crowd, heart fluttering. She searched among the throng for Jonah's familiar frame. Then she spotted him leaning against a support beam, coat in hand, eyes shining as he watched the lights. He must have finished his work early to find her. Myra felt a rush of relief and joy. She walked to him, the soft hum of lanterns guiding her steps. "I did this for you," she said, voice steady but full of emotion. "And for everyone who needs a little light." Jonah's face broke into a warm smile. He took her hand and led her into the heart of the dome. "It's beautiful," he said. "I lost track of time in my lab. I forgot how much light you bring into my world." He pointed to a lantern glowing with algae green light. "That one reminds me of our first view of Helios Prime's oceans." Mira smiled, tears sparking her eyes. Together they walked beneath the arches, watching children dance and couples laugh. Jonah pulled Mira close and whispered, "Your heart built this. That is the truest HFY I know." Myra's spirit soared at his words. She realized that sometimes people grow distant not because they stop caring, but because they lose sight of what matters. She had bridged the gap again by sharing her hope and creativity. After the festival, Jonah stayed by her side as they cleaned up stray lanterns. They talked late into the artificial night about Earth, Helios Prime, and the worlds. They would explore together. Every sentence they shared felt like a promise renewed. Mira felt her sadness melt away, replaced by a firm belief that no distance, physical or emotional, could stand against their determination and love. That night, Mira and Jonah returned to her quarters under the same view of lavender seas. They sat at her workbench, hands intertwined, and planned their next adventure. In the silence that fell, Mira knew that hope was not a lonely flame, but a roaring beacon when shared. And as long as they held on to each other and to the HFY spirit of never giving up, no journey would ever feel too far. Mira woke to the soft hum of the station's life support system. She stretched and smiled, remembering last night's festival of lights. Jonah slept beside her, his breathing calm. For a moment she felt complete. But as she sat up and looked around, a new worry crept in. His research on Helios Prime's glowing algae was growing urgent. She knew that soon he would be called back to the lab for long days of experiments. She pressed her fingers to her temple, wondering how she could keep their bond strong once more. Over breakfast, Jonah told her about an upcoming expedition too. Study deep-sea vents beneath the lavender oceans. "They need me down there for at least a week," he said, voice bright with excitement. Myra's heart sank. She forced herself to cheer, nodding as he explained the equipment and schedules. Inside, her mind raced. A week apart felt like an eternity. She remembered the hurt of distance, the sleepless nights, the static of unanswered calls. She did not want to go back to that place, but she refused to let sadness win. She took a deep breath and looked Jonah in the eye. "That's wonderful," she said sincerely. "I'm proud of you." He smiled and squeezed her hand. "I wish you could join me," he said. Mira hesitated. She had no diving suit or space submersible experience, but humanity had always pushed boundaries. If she learned she could be by his side, her heart lifted at the thought. That afternoon, Mira visited the station's training center. She watched holographic lessons on underwater navigation and pressure suits. Each lesson made her feel more hopeful. She asked the instructor questions, and he guided her patiently. By evening, she had signed up for a rapid training program. She borrowed a basic submersible suit and practiced moving across a simulation of Helios Prime's ocean floor. The suit's weight and the simulated currents tested her resolve, but she pressed on. Every struggle reminded her of home and Jonah's faith in her. On the final day of training, Myra climbed into the real submersible shuttle tucked at the station's dock. Jonas waited on the platform, his eyes full of pride and worry. She waved, then sealed the hatch. Inside, the cabin smelled of metal and fuel. She steadied her breath, recalling her first shuttle flight. "Humanity never bows to fear," she whispered. She activated the thrusters. The shuttle glided into the station's viewport and then into open space. Outside, the lavender planet shone like a beacon. Moments later, the shuttle slipped through a breach in the station's hull and descended into Helios Prime's atmosphere. Mira watched the seas rush past, swirling violet waves dotted with bioluminescent blooms. She adjusted her course toward the research vessel Jonah's team had anchored above the vents. Her heart raced as she neared the drop-off zone. She could almost feel Jonah's presence guiding her. The shuttle broke the water's surface and plunged into the glowing ocean. Light filtered through the water in shifting patterns, bathing the cabin in gentle violet hues. Mira gripped the controls, marveling at the world around her. Strange fish with glowing fins darted past, curious about the new visitor. She charted a course down toward the vents, where warm currents met cold, creating swirling plumes of steam and light. At the appointed depth, she saw Jonah's small research platform. He floated outside, tethered to the ship by a slender cable. When he saw her, he waved frantically. Myra's chest tightened with joy. She guided her shuttle alongside him, then opened the cabin door. Water flooded the entryway, but the suit kept her safe. She swam to Jonah, and they embraced in the weightless cold. "I knew you would come," Jonah said, eyes shining behind his helmet. Mira smiled through her own visor. "I promised I would try," she replied. They swam together toward the vent field. Jonah pointed out delicate algae growing on basalt pillars, and Myra logged samples in her datapad. They worked side by side, sharing tools and laughter. Each moment together erased the memory of separation. After hours of research, they returned. To the shuttle, Jonah held Mira's hand as they climbed inside. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around her like a blanket. He brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. "We make a good team," he said softly. Mira nodded, feeling stronger than ever. They had bridged yet another distance this time across an alien ocean, proving that no challenge could pull them apart. When they surfaced back at the station dock, Jonah helped Myra out of her suit. Others gathered to congratulate them. Myra looked at Jonah and said, "Distance is only a number." He smiled and kissed her forehead. They walked together through the docking bay, their steps light and sure. That night they sat on the observation deck watching Helios Prime's moons cast silver paths across the lavender sea. Mira leaned against Jonah, her heart full of hope. She had felt distant once, and despair had almost taken hold. But by daring to learn, to build, and to dive into the unknown, she had found her way back. In that soft alien light, she knew humanity's greatest power was its hope, and its refusal to accept distance as the end. Mira woke before sunrise on the morning after Jonah's return. Light from the station's twin moons filtered through her window, painting soft patterns on the floor. She sat up and smiled as Jonah stirred beside her. The long journey in there, long days apart, felt like a distant memory now. Still, she carried a small flutter of worry in her chest. What if they faced distance again? But she pressed the thought away. Humanity never cowers before a challenge. Together, they would meet whatever came next with hope and heart. Over breakfast, they talked about their plans for the Interstellar Beacon Network. This network would link remote outposts and tiny colonies, giving travelers a lifeline and a sense of home. Jonah sketched ideas for relay stations on distant asteroids. Mira refined the design of their linked communication crystals, adding a simple alert that would flash if someone felt alone. Their workbench was covered in tools and glowing prototypes, a testament to their shared dreams. As they sketched and soldered, their hands moved in perfect rhythm. Each moment of collaboration reminded them that distance was only a matter of space. By midday, they had built the first relay prototype. It stood on the workshop tabula metal tower, no taller than Mira's knee, crowned by a tiny crystal dish. When activated, it sent a warm pulse of light and sound, echoing their joined voices. Jonah placed his hand on the crystal, and it glowed with Mira's recorded laughter. Mira pressed her palm on his crystal, and it played his quiet words of love. The simple exchange made their eyes shine. They tested the relay across the room. No lag, no static, just clear connection, as if they stood side by side. That afternoon, they carried the prototype to the station's docking bay. A small crowd gathered to watch as Mira set the relay on a platform and Jonah powered it up. The dish emitted a soft hum and the connected crystals pulsed in time. Light and sound danced around them, drawing gasps from the onlookers. Families holding children stopped their chatter. Travelers paused in mid-stride. All of them felt the glow of connection, the reassuring pulse of someone's heartbeat, even if they did not know whose. In that moment, distance seemed to shrink for everyone present. As evening fell, Jonah and Mira stood on the station's observation deck. The lavender seas of Helios Prime spread out below, and the great domed city lights glittered like earthbound stars. The relay prototype shone beside them, its glow matching the distant constellations. Mira leaned into Jonah's side and said softly, "We made something that brings people together." He wrapped an arm around her and kissed her temple. "Because we never gave up," he replied. They watched the light pulse once more, feeling hope ripple through the night. They spent the rest of the week preparing more prototypes and teaching others how to build them. Engineers from different worlds visited their workshop to learn the designs. Botanists adapted the crystals to bloom with bioluminescent algae. Pilots tested the relays on supply drones. The station buzzed with excitement as everyone pitched in. Mira felt her sadness transform into joy. Seeing so many people united by a common goal showed her the true power of humanity, our willingness to reach out, to share, and to care. On the day of the relay network's first full test, they gathered at the station's control center. Jonah keyed in the launch sequence, and Mira stood beside him, her fingers interlaced with his. Across the galaxy, hundreds of relays flickered to life in unison. A soft wave of light and hum rolled through space, carrying voices and warmth. In each colony, someone heard a familiar laugh or a kind word, reminding them they were not alone. The network crackled alive, a living web of connections spun by human hands. As the signal settled into a steady rhythm, Mira and Jonah watched data streams fill the monitors. Messages of gratitude scrolled by. I felt my sister's voice again. My crew heard the beacon and found safe harbor. I knew someone cared. Tears sprang to Mira's eyes. She turned to Jonah and said, "We did it." He pulled her close and whispered, "This is only the beginning." In that moment, every fear of distance was gone. They had proven that hope, creativity, and the human spirit could bridge any void. That night, they stood together under the station's artificial stars, the soft glow of the relay prototype beside them. Mira looked at Jonah and felt her heart swell with love and confidence. No matter where their paths led, they would face distanced together. As long as they kept shining their light, the galaxy would never feel so big and lonely again. Humanity's greatest power was not in warships or weapons, but in the warmth of connection and the courage to hope.